Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
In addition to these, Chen Ming also has some special things in his hands. For example, the ship spirit and the small stone. Although their current role seems to be just a mascot. But the ship spirit is a ship spirit after all, and it needs to affect a spaceship for a long time to play its due role. 2 months is too short, not to mention that Xiao Yang will have to keep the rhythm at the highest point for another month. So Chen Ming knows that the ship spirit is slacking off and doesn't care. And Xiao Shi, it is a hamster that has been with him from Ruimu to today. It seems to have some psychic potential, and then it ate too many fairy leaves at Yuhui and evolved into a psychic creature. So Chen Ming also said that he would never give it up. In addition to the 2 living things, Chen Ming also has some special dead things, such as 2 condensed psychic origins and crazy language spirit stones, and a mind pulse generator. It is the existence of these things that allows Chen Ming to be extremely busy every day and still be able to fall behind in the training of psychic energy. In fact, Chen Ming still has a lot of things, such as those supplies that have not been counted. But it is too troublesome to count the supplies. Just know that there is no shortage. All these things add up to Chen Ming's entire fortune. That is, everything Chen Ming has accumulated step by step to get to where he is today. At the same time, it is also the motivation that supports Chen Ming to continue. The next day, earlier than the original scheduled time, Bai Quan contacted Chen Ming in advance and asked him, "How is it?" Chen Ming was ready yesterday, so he could immediately answer now, "No problem on my side." "Okay, then let's go meet some people first." "Who?" "The think tank I told you about yesterday, I found for you." Bai Quan tapped the terminal that Chen Ming had given him in his hand. This thing is very useful for private conversations, but it is not very useful when contacting other people. You are in the Empire now, or you can directly switch to our 14th Legion's network. There is no need to worry about leakage. Okay. Chen Ming's communication code has never been deliberately hidden. With the help of Bai Quan, he quickly connected to the internal communication network of the 14th Legion. After confirming that the signal was fine, Bai Quan left the office and went to a meeting room in his office building. There are already 5 people waiting here. After entering the conference room, Bai Quan gave Chen Ming access to the computer in the conference room. Chen Ming's face appeared on the projection of the conference room, and the appearance of the conference room also appeared in front of Chen Ming. Bai Quan gestured to the 5 people in the conference room and said, "These are the think tanks I told you about before." The 5 people who were originally sitting in the conference room immediately stood up and bowed slightly to Chen Ming, and the person in the middle said, "Mr. Chen Ming, we can rely on your description of your own psychic power to help you analyze the future development prospects and use effects of psychic power." Chen Ming nodded and quietly sent a question to Bai Quan using the terminal. "By the way, how did you determine the candidates for the think tank?" After all, as a think tank of psychics, it must have an understanding of psychic power and a sufficiently open mind, as well as imagination. Otherwise, these think tanks that are not psychics themselves have no meaning. Bai Quan put his hands behind his back and replied to Chen Ming on the terminal, "There are some ordinary people whose mental power exceeds that of ordinary people, but they cannot awaken psychic power and become psychics. These people with developed mental power are relatively easy to find among ordinary people, just like psychics. And when they assist some psychics in psychic tests, it is easier to observe the effects of psychic power, so the Empire has been looking for such people. Some of these people are official staff of the Empire. When they come into contact with psychic power more often during related tests, those who are interested will take the initiative to apply or participate in the work of psychic-related departments according to the requirements of their superiors. So basically, people who work in psychic-related departments have mental power that is different from that of ordinary people. Then these people are screened in terms of ability, and finally the think tank is selected. In fact, the think tank did not exist at the beginning. It was not until the Empire's management and research on psychics was systematized that this think tank gradually came into being. "If you don't need it, I can let them go now." "That's not necessary." Chen Ming decisively rejected Bai Quan's proposal. Since the think tank of the Empire is a branch that has gradually extended from the psychic department of the Empire and has always existed, time has proved that the think tank is useful, so there is no need for him to deny it directly. And it is always good to have someone to help think. Although his psychic power is not as simple as it seems from the outside, the answer that can be analyzed based on the effects of the psychic power that can be spoken may not be ideal. In addition, Chen Ming can fully see the possibility of his own psychic power development in the future from the ship's spirit. The analysis of outsiders may be a little unreliable, but it is still a reference option. And Chen Ming is indeed curious whether these think tanks of the Empire, which have been screened through layers, can think of a truly applicable psychic power development direction based on only the psychic conditions that he simply described orally. After Chen Ming briefly got to know the 5 people, Bai Quan said to Chen Ming, "It's almost time. The mechanical tribe's affairs have to be discussed in the headquarters conference room. I'll help you connect the signal. When exactly will it start?" "Any time is fine. Everyone should have gathered just now. Then go." Bai Quan reached out and operated the computer in the conference room, connecting Chen Ming's communication signal to a new channel and connecting to a conference room in the headquarters. And when the signal was connected, he first transmitted the conference room signal to Chen Ming, so that Chen Ming could see that there were about 30 people sitting scattered in this larger conference room. Seeing this scene, Chen Ming immediately asked Bai Quan through the terminal, "Are there so many people? I thought there wouldn't be many people interested in psychic energy among those who study the mechanical race." Bai Quan was stunned by Chen Ming's words and quickly replied to Chen Ming on the terminal, "Actually, there are quite a lot. The mechanical race has a lot of things left over from another civilization, including a lot of psychic equipment. And so far, we have not been able to create equipment that can produce psychic effects without relying on psychics, resulting in the mechanical race often using psychic equipment beyond our imagination. So people who study the mechanical race will be more or less interested in psychic energy. Also, although there are only more than 30 people coming this time, our headquarters researchers and scholars who study the mechanical race can at least fill 3 or 4 conference rooms. We are worried that too many people will make you uncomfortable, so we only let them choose representatives to come and participate." Chen Ming immediately glanced at the conference room, which can seat about 300 people. According to Bai Quan, there are actually thousands of mechanical race-related researchers at the headquarters of the 14th Corps, and there should be more. Bai Quan just said that those who can come to attend can fill 3 or 4 conference rooms, and those who cannot attend and have to stay in the institute must be even more researchers. Then Chen Ming really thought wrongly. 30 people are not many at all, but rather pitifully few. It can only be said that after all, the environment that Chen Ming has spent the longest time in that belongs to humans is the pirate space station. Although the people here basically have some understanding of the mechanical race and the mechanical race's psychic equipment, there are not many people who have actually come into contact with the mechanical race and psychic power. But the 14th Legion is different. The army has an absolute understanding of psychic power and has been fighting with the mechanical race for many years, so naturally there are more people who can come into contact with the mechanical race. Just like if Chen Ming had been following the routine and was just an ordinary person, he would definitely not have thought of how many people in the pirate space station became pirates because of committing crimes. Only when you get to the pirate space station will you find that a lot of people on it are pirates. Of course, they basically don't have any high bounties on their backs, and Chen Ming is generally too lazy to care about them. And comparing pirates with mechanical race researchers is indeed a bit insulting to scholars. In short, what kind of environment will produce what kind of people? Seeing that Chen Ming had nothing to say, Bai Quan asked, "Then I'll pick you up?" "Okay." When the communication was two-way connected, Chen Ming's appearance appeared in the conference room. Chen Ming suddenly saw a familiar person in the conference room again, Xiaoyang. Although he looked like an ordinary researcher wearing a white coat and black-framed glasses, there was an unconcealable arrogance in his eyes. Although Chen Ming didn't see him the first time he came up, as long as he glanced a few more times, that look couldn't be hidden, so Chen Ming still noticed him. And Xiaoyang also noticed that Chen Ming's eyes on the projection screen in the conference room were locked on him through the screen. So he nodded slightly to Chen Ming. He was actually a little surprised. His research direction is mainly spacecraft design, not specializing in mechanical race. However, his interest and understanding of psychic energy are greater than any researcher in the 14th Corps, So he is more interested in the mechanical race, which is closely related to psychic energy. I heard from colleagues in the Next Door Research Institute that the 14th Corps has made progress in the research of mechanical race recently, and a report meeting will be held remotely in the branch. He came here out of curiosity. As a psychic who recently joined the 14th Corps, Xiaoyang still has this face. In addition, the person attending the meeting was Chen Ming. As the organizer of this meeting, Bai Quan knew that Chen Ming and Xiaoyang were connected by Wuan, so he naturally opened a back door for him. As a result, when Xiaoyang arrived and the meeting officially started, he found that it was Chen Ming who was going to speak at the meeting. This really surprised him. But in addition to being surprised, he also thought of something. Because in his opinion, Chen Ming could appear on the screen of the internal meeting of the 14th Corps, which meant that Chen Ming had also joined the 14th Corps. This was a good thing for him. They all came from psychic associations and were psychics led by Wuan. There had been cooperation before, and there was also ongoing cooperation recently. With the previous foundation, they could communicate more with each other in the future. So he took the initiative to greet Chen Ming. And Chen Ming also nodded and did not respond much, and was not affected by seeing someone he knew. He started the report meeting on the research of the mechanical race that he promised normally. After the conference room became quiet, Chen Ming organized his language a little and said, "The hive mind network of the mechanical tribe is composed of psychic energy." The attention of everyone in the entire conference room was instantly attracted by what Chen Ming said. Someone in the conference room immediately started discussing this topic. Have you ever made such an assumption before? Yes, but the psychic devices of the machine tribe are mechanical and rigid, without spirituality. And the machine tribe itself is the life that best fits the term spirituality, so no one has ever agreed with this proposal. Chen Ming did not continue speaking at this time, but listened silently. When the discussion in the conference room is almost over, it becomes quiet again. He continued to describe his understanding of the machine race based on his psychic control and understanding of the machine race. It can be said that these researchers have a very good understanding of the structure or design of the machine family, and may be the best in the entire empire. But in terms of understanding the nature of the machine tribe, no one can compare to him, who actually controlled the machine tribe and built the machine tribe's hive network. The subsequent meeting process was not like the situation at the beginning. Apart from sometimes causing some small discussions, no one directly raised objections to Chen Ming's words. After all, everyone present had heard of Chen Ming more or less, and no one could guarantee that what Chen Ming said at first glance seemed outrageous must be wrong. Bai Quan, who was in the branch at this time, also received a call soon after. In addition to the conference room of the headquarters, there are actually many people watching Chen Ming's meeting, but they can communicate directly with Chen Ming in the conference room. The call Bai Quan received now was that someone from above had given an order to come down. Bai Quan walked to the door of the conference room, looked back at Chen Ming who was talking on the screen, and turned to leave. After an hour, Chen Ming's own account of his understanding of the machine race came to an end, and Bai Quan also returned to the scene again. As soon as he came back, he saw someone in the conference room of the headquarters asking Chen Ming, "Mr. Chen Ming, can you come to the headquarters in person to demonstrate to us the changes after the mechanical race is controlled? We have captured them here. Mechanical family samples are available for your use." Just when Bai Quan thought about wiring in to stop it, Chen Ming had already replied, "I need to stay in the Gallo Star territory and cannot leave at will." The researcher who just asked the question immediately said, "We can take samples of the mechanical race to the Gallo Star field." Chen Ming did not explicitly refuse, but just said, "Then I will consider it." "Thanks." The researcher thanked him and immediately sat back. Chen Ming also said the last words, "Then that's all I want to talk about today. If you still have questions or opinions, you can ask Lieutenant General Bai Quan later." Then Chen Ming cut off the screen and sent a message to Bai Quan. "It's over here. I saw it. You don't really want someone to bring the mechanical race to the Gallo Star territory, do you?" Chen Ming said immediately, "Of course this is just an excuse. I can't just say in front of so many people that I am too lazy to help them demonstrate, right? Then I will lose both of our faces." Chen Ming suddenly took a deep breath, relieved his nervousness and said, "I have never spoken in front of so many people. I am quite tired." I don't think you acted like it was your first time. Maybe it's talent. Chen Ming responded casually and said, "That's it for today. Do you want us to continue if you're still free? Yesterday, I had another fight with Cheng Xinghai. Do you want to review it?" Bai Quan thought about his task and said, "Then it might not be possible today. We'll have to wait until tomorrow." But there is no need to review the battle between you and Cheng Xinghai yesterday because you never directed it at all. I think it's better for you to limit your psychic abilities, otherwise this simulated battle will be meaningless. Chen Ming said in agreement, "Actually, I think so too. So let's do it. See you tomorrow." Just when Chen Ming was about to end the communication, Bai Quan stopped him and said, "Wait a moment. Some people from the think tank have something to say to you." "Okay." The person who was supposed to be the representative of the 5 people said to Chen Ming through the communication channel of the 14th Army, "Mr. Chen Ming, we would like to ask you a few questions." You ask, "Are the psychically controlled machines completely controlled by you?" "Yes, I said it at the meeting." "Does the machine clan controlled by you still have self-awareness?" "It exists, but each individual will become very weak after leaving their hive network. Their thinking ability will be greatly reduced, and they will only have the most basic ability to obey orders." One more question is, do you know anything about the mechanical hive network? As far as I know from what I said in the meeting, the machine race I control has no way to go back after it leaves the hive network. After the think tank representative asked Chen Ming 3 questions, he immediately had an urgent discussion with others. Then he turned back to Chen Ming and said, "Mr. Chen Ming, we are wondering whether your spiritual power can integrate the consciousness of these mechanical races as abnormal sub-individuals and build a new one with your spiritual power as the core. Hive mind network? Question mark. Chen Ming was silent. He didn't know what to say. Is this the value of a think tank? At this time, the representative continued to say to Chen Ming, "We don't know much about your psychic abilities, but according to what you said personally, your control of the machine race will cause the machine race to become abnormal sub-individuals and unable to reconnect to the machine. Hive mind network, this. And the theory you put forward in the meeting just now, this should be feasible." Chen Ming subconsciously glanced at the city of the mechanical tribe he controlled and said with some uncertainty, "I can give it a try. What's your name?" "Yanzei." After the matter with Bai Quan was over, immediately afterwards, good news came from the Queen of Insects. A new biotechnology experiment was successful. Is another ongoing technology besides bioarchitecture. This is very good news for Chen Ming. He immediately transferred his consciousness to the bugs near the queen in the nest, preparing to go over and verify this technology. After the verification was completed, he directly transferred the consciousness of the insect queen temporarily to the body of the insect queen at the highest point. That night, Chen Ming left the highest point alone and went to the pirate space station. It was still the same as before, without any protective clothing or other equipment. And just like last time, he ran directly to the bar where Lao Wu often went. The bar at night was much noisier than the last time Chen Ming came. The crowd was crowded into a small space, which made Chen Ming feel uncomfortable. However, he still held back. After entering, he first asked the bartender for a glass of very exciting liquor, and then went to the corner to find Lao Wu fooling around. When Old Wu saw Chen Ming coming over, he asked with extremely strange eyes, "Xiao Ming, are you so free today?" Chen Ming took a sip of the wine in his hand and said, "Yeah, I just did something mind-numbing with someone during the day, so I came out to hang out and relax. By the way, how did the food taste last time?" Old Wu recalled the taste of shellac before, and his mouth instinctively secreted more saliva. "The taste is very good, but..." The corners of Chen Ming's mouth curled up. It was obvious that Old Wu had also been tricked. He immediately took out a fresh-keeping box containing a portion of shellac from his bag and handed it to Lao Wu and said, "I still have a lot here." Seeing Lao Wu's hesitant look, Chen Ming took out a new piece of shellac, took a spoon and stuffed it into his mouth. When Old Wu saw this, although he still felt a little hesitant in his heart, he still took the box. After all, the smell is really tempting. When taking the fuse box, Old Wu couldn't help but ask, "So what exactly is this thing?" Chen Ming asked, "Do you know the Thorn Zerg clan?" Old Wu searched for this somewhat familiar name in his mind, and finally found the Thorn Zerg tribe in Chen Ming's past memory, and said, I have an impression. That's what they produce. I came across a nest of wild bugs and found them in their nest. I looked through the research report on the thorn bugs. This thing is edible, don't worry. Old Wu nodded, and suddenly said with some regret, That's a pity. I thought this thing could be produced, and it felt like a good business. With that said, he also opened the crisper, and then took out a spoon from nowhere and tasted the taste of shellac like Chen Ming. Chen Ming was a little surprised by the idea proposed by Lao Wu, because this idea is actually good. He can indeed mass-produce shellac, and he shouldn't have to worry about sales. The 0.2% food poisoning rate is a bit troublesome, but it can also be solved using the allergen argument. But unfortunately, the situation of the Thorn Zerg must not be exposed. Therefore, Chen Ming can only give up the idea of this new open-source fund for the time being. After eating the shellac, Chen Ming didn't stay much longer and said, I just came here to wander around for a few times, and I'm leaving. Walk slowly. Chen Ming drained the wine in his hand, turned around and walked out of the bar. Although his face was visibly red, and he looked like he was drunk, but he still walked out of the bar steadily. Chen Ming left the bar where Lao Wu was drinking and stood on the street outside. He shook his head slightly, like a person who was recovering from drunkenness. However, there was no trance in his eyes, but he was as sober as usual. After identifying the direction, Chen Ming walked into the city on the street where the entire space station had lowered the overall lighting brightness at night. The factory director's home was near the center of the space station, very close to the location of the Management Bureau building, and it seemed to be the staff dormitory of the Management Bureau. To be honest, Chen Ming didn't know how the factory director, a second-generation son of a large company chairman, could master maintenance technology and was willing to work in the maintenance factory. Moreover, he usually lived in such a simple place compared to his status. Although the staff dormitory seemed to be good, it looked wrong. However, this was the factory director's private matter, and Chen Ming would not ask more. It was at this time that Chen Ming suddenly remembered that the company seemed to have said that he would arrange a special dormitory for him. Although he didn't want it, the factory manager seemed to have picked it up during a chat before, and the dormitory was reserved for him. Forget it, it doesn't matter. Chen Ming was too lazy to go and see it. He still had to go to the factory manager. When Chen Ming came to the company's employee dormitory, because Chen Ming had told the factory manager in advance that he was going to go there. The factory manager also took Chen Ming to his residence directly at the entrance of the community and stayed in the study. After asking the same questions as Lao Wu, Chen Ming also gave the same answer. Chen Ming just chatted with the factory manager about the recent situation. By the way, he also asked about the business of the repair shop. After all, it was a place where he had stayed for a while, so he had some feelings. However, while chatting, Chen Ming noticed that the factory manager looked at him strangely. Chen Ming thought that the factory manager had seen something and asked, What's wrong? Nothing. The factory manager shook his head and continued to chat with Chen Ming. But after a while, he said to Chen Ming hesitantly, Let me ask you something. What are your plans for the future? What's the future? After the colony is built. Chen Ming continued to chat and said casually, I haven't thought about it yet, but it's not that easy to build a colony. It may take a few years, or even more than 10 years. I will definitely think about it by then. Your career will definitely go smoothly, so, is it almost time to start a family? Chen Ming pointed at his face and asked in confusion, Am I very old? I just think it's almost time. Then I can only say that I don't have this idea yet. Chen Ming called up a schedule for this period on the terminal and placed it on the factory floor. In front of the director, he said, Look, where do I have time to do other things? The factory manager asked, Will you do it if you have time? That also requires time. And I'm not saying I'm completely against it, I just really don't have time. Oh, so that's it. Yes, that's it. Why do you suddenly ask that? The factory manager raised his thumb and pointed to the door of the study room and said, You know I'm married, sometimes I talk about you with my wife, and then I talk about this aspect by the way, she asked me to help you take care of it. Chen Ming smiled and said, There's nothing to take care of, right? It's still my own problem. Yes, you should focus on your career. Chen Ming chatted with the factory manager for a while and then left here. Finally, go to the boss. At the door of the hardware store of Space Arm Number 2, Chen Ming happened to see the boss closing the store when he came. Chen Ming looked for everyone he knew, and when he finally arrived at the boss's place, it was almost late at night. Chen Ming stopped. However, the boss noticed Chen Ming and waved to him, signaling him to go over. When he approached the hardware store, the boss suddenly looked Chen Ming up and down and asked, "Why do you seem a little nervous?" Chen Ming explained casually, "I just completed an experiment. The experimental process was a bit difficult, but the result was not bad." When Chen Ming was talking, the boss could feel that he quickly calmed down, so he didn't say anything. After a few simple words, Chen Ming took the initiative to leave here, and time did not allow him to continue to disturb others. When the boss disappeared from his sight, Chen Ming suddenly let out a long breath and then walked all the way back to the highest point. He boarded the spaceship and went to the captain's room of the spaceship. There was a person waiting for him here, and this person looked exactly like Chen Ming. To be precise, Chen Ming on the spaceship was the real Chen Ming. And the Chen Ming, who just went out to meet with the boss of the old factory director Wu, was just a prosthesis that looked exactly like him and was controlled by Chen Ming's consciousness. This is not a cloning technology, but a technology mastered by the Queen of Insects. Through Chen Ming's genes, a pure fake body was created using the same method as ordinary Zerg. The effect of the fake body was simple and direct, and he had just experienced it himself. This fake body technology was a technology that Chen Ming had specially asked the Queen to make some time ago. That was the only thing that he thought the Queen was doing some time ago that could be considered good news. Originally, the Queen of Zerg was doing two things. One was to cultivate Zerg biological buildings, and the other was to cultivate special individuals of the Zerg. Biological buildings are extremely difficult to build, and the efficiency of advancement is very low. Chen Ming has no good solution for the time being. The process of cultivating special individuals is also difficult to achieve Chen Ming's ultimate goal, cultivating high-intensity combat individuals. The Zerg is a species that wins by numbers, relying on its strong reproductive ability to crush the past. It is also very difficult to start cultivating high-intensity combat individuals that the Zerg does not need out of thin air. But in the process of cultivating special individuals, Chen Ming suddenly had an idea. Can the Zerg use human genes to make Zerg individuals show some human characteristics? Although the human body itself is too weak, and the developed human brain can only serve as a carrier for the hive-thinking Zerg, it is meaningless to the Zerg. But Chen Ming just wanted to try. Even if the Queen of Zerg has to do several things at the same time like him, because he saw a glimmer of possibility in this idea. After Chen Ming fed the Queen of Zerg with his own blood, he got a positive answer. The Queen of Worms can indeed manually create some human organs and body tissues, but many Zerg genes will be mixed in, causing the final products to be very strange. But at least it means that this thing is feasible. Then Chen Ming asked the Queen of Worms to try the idea he had thought of at the beginning, a further step. An idea that can better ensure his own safety. Create a prosthesis like him. Such a new idea that is independent of the special individual. The Zerg created by the Queen of Worms will be affected by the Queen of Worms and controlled by Chen Ming at the same time. Then the people created by the Queen of Worms should have the same effect. So Chen Ming has been asking the Queen of Worms to try, and has been paying attention to this matter. The number of failures in this research is not much less than that of the biological architecture made by the Queen of Worms. And the failure of the biological architecture research only resulted in some more augmented organisms and undigested energy crystals. But once Chen Ming's prosthesis fails during the experiment, it often produces many strange and twisted things with his face. In the end, it will be wrapped by the fungal blanket and digested again into the most basic nutrients. The process made Chen Ming lose his sanity a little. The bodies of his own dead bodies that have died so far can almost circle the highest point. However, after seeing his own strange-looking bodies so many times, Chen Ming no longer felt anything. Or he had gotten used to it when Yuhui cloned his genes and created a bunch of strange-looking clones that were infected by the dimension. So when the Queen of Insects created a bunch of his bodies, Chen Ming felt weird at first, but it didn't matter to him at all later. Sometimes, in order to make his needs and ideas clear to the queen of insects, he would even point at his broken bodies. And today, the experiment was finally successful, and Chen Ming used the honeycomb network to control the prosthesis. His mentality of controlling the prosthesis was the same as using a biological armor, without any fluctuations. It can also be regarded as training Chen Ming's resistance to various strange things. He can control the prosthesis to go out and meet people without changing his face. Originally, Chen Ming wanted to give someone he knew a little surprise to see if he could be found to be abnormal. But it seems that no one found out that he was a fake. The prosthesis is indeed effective. And Chen Ming also confirmed the sensory problems through the prosthesis. It can be confirmed that he can share the sensory organs of the prosthesis and can actively accept or resist. In other words, when the prosthesis eats food, Chen Ming can directly taste the taste of the food, and the same is true for the taste of alcohol. However, the effect of alcohol on the prosthesis will not affect Chen Ming in turn. Even if it dies, it is only the prosthesis that dies. So the prosthesis is also an excellent substitute for Chen Ming. During this process, when he went to find the factory director and was stared at by the factory director with strange eyes, Chen Ming thought he was exposed. In the end, he didn't. The factory director just came to urge marriage. Only when he went to find the boss at the end was it the most nervous moment for him in this test. As a result, his subconscious nervousness on the prosthesis was seen, but the boss couldn't even see that the prosthesis was fake. Because Chen Ming's consciousness controls the prosthesis through the hive mind network connection. Chen Ming's hive mind network was constructed using his own psychic energy, which means that his psychic energy completely enveloped the prosthesis, allowing the prosthesis to have his own normal psychic energy fluctuations. Of course, if you find a way to go deep into the prosthesis's brain, you will definitely find something abnormal. After all, Chen Ming's spiritual nerves are not here. But the boss will not be idle and use psychic energy to directly explore Chen Ming's head. Normally, there is no simple way to easily investigate other people's brains, especially what is in the brain of a psychic. Only last time, when Chen Ming left the pirate space station for a while, he came back with 2 psychic energy fluctuations connected to something inexplicably on his body. That surprised the boss and thought that Chen Ming was parasitized by something. He used mental power to force Chen Ming to check it again. At that time, he checked and found nothing wrong, and Chen Ming also said that it was fine. It was normal for the boss to see 2 mental fluctuations on Chen Ming's body that were connected to the outside world. So, the boss didn't find anything abnormal just now. Even if someone came to do a genetic test on his prosthesis, the final result would definitely be Chen Ming's own genes. When the prosthesis was made, the Queen of Zerg also made special adjustments, and there would not be any Zerg parts in the prosthesis. So since those who were close to Chen Ming couldn't see the problem, then in the eyes of anyone else, the prosthesis was Chen Ming himself. However, once Chen Ming stopped the conscious control of the prosthesis, then it would be like now. The prosthesis that was still standing in front of Chen Ming instantly collapsed to the ground. It was a mass of dead meat after losing Chen Ming's consciousness. Of course, Chen Ming didn't completely withdraw his consciousness. He would still leave a part of his subtle consciousness in the prosthesis. To prevent the prosthesis without self-consciousness from being occupied by things from another dimension that caused dimensional infection, Chen Ming immersed his consciousness in the prosthesis again and controlled the prosthesis to climb up. He and the prosthesis simultaneously extended their hands and made different gestures. It was very easy for Chen Ming to divide his mind into 2 tasks. And there was also a bracelet made of the queen's body tissue on the wrist of the prosthesis in front of Chen Ming. After the prosthesis raised its hand, a liquid mixed with metallic color and bright green flowed out of its wrist, gradually wrapping it and forming a set of biological armor. After wearing this armor, the combat ability of the prosthesis should be the same as Chen Ming himself. After all, the physical fitness of the prosthesis is still based on his situation, and the armor is just that armor. It does not have the body tissues and organs of the Zerg with abnormal combat capabilities. But this ordinary prosthesis can do some things for him that he would never risk doing. For example, Go to the 14th Legion on his behalf, which he would never dare to go to. After Chen Ming agreed to Bai Quan's invitation to join the war yesterday, he was thinking about how he could get the most benefits in the war. That must be to participate deeply in this war. Because this war is a must-win. A war that is sure to win, he has no reason to refuse to participate. However, just helping with the research of the mechanical race, as he had agreed with Bai Quan before, was not enough. Although he could get some benefits, it was definitely not as good as participating in something deeper. How to deeply participate in this war initiated by the Empire and prepared by the 14th Army? The answer is also obvious. Go to the 14th Army. As a temporary tactical instructor in the contract he just signed, Chen Ming does not need to actually join the 14th Army because he now has the contract he signed. After all, the 14th Army is the main force of the Empire's early war against the mechanical race. They definitely have first-hand intelligence on the war. And Chen Ming, as the person who currently knows the mechanical race best, can definitely get it. But if Chen Ming is not in the 14th Army, then Bai Chuan's speed of giving information will definitely be a little delayed. Only by going there in person, at the 14th Army's base, can he get the information he needs in the first place. Then find an opportunity to remotely command his Yuhui to grab the benefits. But there are also obvious problems with doing this. It is impossible for Chen Ming to run to the 14th Army at the risk of being under house arrest. Because he has used his deep repair psychic power several times and optimized some technologies. Not only the cooperation with Xiaoyang, the hyperspace channel jump technology itself is the result of reverse research using deep repair. Even if Chen Ming concealed the research and development process in the paper. But once there is a trace, he can't guarantee that his ability will never be leaked. It's only a matter of time before his psychic power is exposed, unless he doesn't use it at all. But not using psychic power is impossible. So once the psychic power of this optimization technology is leaked, although his own safety is the least worrying point, countless people don't want him to die. But he and the word freedom will also say goodbye. Therefore, not only the 14th Corps, but also some other places belonging to the government army, he certainly dare not go. Although Bai Quan and he have a good relationship recently. But Bai Quan is a soldier, Chen Ming really can't guarantee what Bai Quan will do. So the importance of the fake body is raised here. It allows Chen Ming to do many things without burden. Before Chen Ming actually made the fake body, he didn't expect the fake body to be so powerful. It doesn't seem right to say it's powerful. It should be said that it is such a unique effect. At first, he just thought that the fake body was a good life-saving technology and it was feasible, so he tried it. In the end, he got a pleasant surprise. Chen Ming threw the fake body, which had collapsed again, to the Queen of Insects, asking her to help take care of it. Tomorrow, the fake body will be useful. At dawn the next day, Chen Ming asked the fake body to contact with the terminal, and when Bai Quan appeared on the screen and started teaching, the fake body suddenly asked Bai Quan, "Do you have any places open to the public in the 14th Corps?" When Bai Quan came up, he was stunned by Chen Ming's question. He thought about it and said, "It shouldn't be possible, especially at this time when the army is on lockdown. Why do you suddenly ask about this?" "Nothing. I just suddenly became curious about what the territory of your 14th Legion looks like." Bai Quan said casually, "Would you like to come over and take a look?" "Okay." Huh? Bai Quan didn't expect Chen Ming to give such a reply at all. He had invited him so many times before, but Chen Ming never agreed once. At this time, he suddenly agreed, and Chen Ming took the initiative to express his intention intentionally or unintentionally. Bai Quan hesitated for a while. Upon seeing this, Chen Ming added, "Didn't I just promise your people in the headquarters yesterday that they would bring the mechanical race over and I would help them demonstrate what the mechanical race under my control would become? Just be satisfied. Do you believe this reason?" Chen Ming himself also knew that the reason he made up casually was not reliable. After thinking about it, he continued according to his current situation. "Well, actually, I want to see the technology of your 14th Legion. You also know that many of your technologies are not available on public academic websites. Well, I've recently hit a bottleneck when learning cruiser skills. I want to see your skills and change my mind." And you said before that I help you conduct research on the machine race, and any results you get will be rewarded with military merit. I'll go directly to your place so that I can use the equipment to get some results or something. Bai Quan immediately grasped the key to Chen Ming's words and said, "Are you interested in our equipment?" Chen Ming spread his hands and said, "I can't help it. I'm short of money recently. Your place is a good place to make money." Chen Ming's half-truths and half-false words made Bai Quan confused for a moment as to what Chen Ming wanted to do. He could only use a joking tone and asked in a direction that might cause Chen Ming's attitude to suddenly change. "How do you make our 14th Army Corps not look like a serious place? Isn't it okay for you to speed up the progress there?" "It's okay, but it's just too good. So the money is flowing out like water. How about you help me a little? I remember that the Empire seems to have a pioneering law, which can provide certain financial and technical support to pioneers." Bai Quan said repeatedly, "Stop, stop, stop. That was the law of the pioneering era. Are you going to use it now? You know this as well?" "Yes. The laws of the Empire now stipulate that there are no restrictions on personal exploration and development, and the establishment of colonies outside the Empire does not require approval." "What else is there? Gone, right?" "It seems like it's gone, so I have to find a way to solve the money problem, right?" "Really? There is nothing wrong with just listening to the explanation. Many people know about what he is doing outside the country, and Chen Ming's material circulation follows serious trade routes and is taxed, so it is easy to investigate. Otherwise, Bai Quan would not have been so decisive before and said that he would arrange a way for Chen Ming to purchase supplies at cost price. They can roughly estimate the basis of the power Chen Ming has developed based on the amount of supplies Chen Ming purchased. However, all the materials purchased by Chen Ming will eventually be sent to the boss's colony and will be transported away by Chen Mingling. Therefore, the final transportation process cannot be determined. But it is easy to tell whether Chen Ming is short of money. According to the recent flow of materials in the boss's colony, Chen Ming did spend a lot of money, and it was normal to be short of money. After all, the material purchase route he arranged has not yet been fully implemented in Chen Ming's hands, and it will probably take another week. Therefore, Chen Ming's reason for being short of money is totally justified. But Bai Quan always felt something was wrong. After thinking about it, he opened his mouth and said, "I can let you come here, but aren't you worried about anything?" Chen Ming asked back, "Worried that you will use violence to keep me here? No way. Probably. Many people already think that you are not suitable for leaving the Empire, so I can't say." Chen Ming said again, "It's okay. You don't have to worry for me. Why didn't I go to your place before? Because to go to the 14th Legion, you have to be from the 14th Legion. But I still don't want to join directly. The army is too troublesome for me. It's different now. I'm a temporary soldier. I've read everything on the contract. This identity war will be over. I'll have to go take a look if I get the chance." Bai Quan frowned and suddenly took off the badge of the 14th Legion on his chest and said to Chen Ming, "Seriously? Why did you suddenly have this idea? This doesn't seem like something you would do. If you weren't talking to me with your spiritual power now, I wouldn't even think you were Chen Ming." Bai Quan's actions made Chen Ming feel that Bai Quan was asking him questions as a friend of his, not as a lieutenant general of the 14th Army Corps. In fact, Chen Ming could indeed choose to take his time, choose a gradual and euphemistic approach, and slowly express his desire to go to the 14th Legion with Bai Quan. But after thinking about it, he found that he could not find the key point of his attitude change at all. It's just that he couldn't find a completely reasonable reason to hang out at the 14th Legion station while his external exploration and development process was still going on. No matter when, he must face Bai Quan's doubts. Therefore, Chen Ming simply found an excuse to go there. Of course, Bai Quan could find Chen Ming's behavior strange, but he had no reason to refuse. Moreover, he only decided to go to the 14th Legion because he had the prosthesis and the courage to go to the 14th Legion. He did not have any negative thoughts about the 14th Legion itself. This can be proven by time, so Chen Ming did not explain much now. He just replied to Bai Quan's question just now, "Because I have the ability to have this idea." Bai Quan could see that Chen Ming did not want to answer this question in detail, and his attitude was also very firm. He didn't say much more. After all, inviting Chen Ming to join the 14th Legion, even if it wasn't joining in the actual sense, but just joining the 14th Legion, was what he had always wanted to do. Bai Quan put on the badge he had just taken off and finally confirmed, "Are you sure you want to come?" "Sure." With the safety guarantee of the prosthesis, Chen Ming can even take the initiative to go to more places that are more dangerous for him. When?
Now.
After the communication between Chen Ming and Bai Quan ended, Bai Quan thought about it in his office and finally decided to pick up the terminal and contact the psyker friend who helped him detect Chen Ming's location. After briefly telling him what had just happened, Bai Quan asked, "Why do you think Chen Ming came?" The other end of the phone was silent for a long time before replying, "You don't understand. So you came to ask me? I'm very busy. I have to confirm the suspected important targets of the machine tribe that you sent over there. I really don't understand. How come there are so many false targets?" Bai Quan coughed twice in embarrassment, did not answer the topic, and continued to bring back the topic he just talked about. "You are a psyker. You can always understand Chen Ming's thoughts better than me." His psychic abilities are constantly improving. When his value continues to increase, sooner or later he will be put under house arrest in disguise. There is nothing I can do to stop him. The psychic explorer still didn't answer Bai Quan's question and asked, "I can't think of how you should put him under house arrest." Bai Quan said with certainty, "There is a way, but it won't be realized so quickly. It's not so fast. What are you worried about? Maybe Chen Ming really wants to join your 14th Legion? Is he just planning to investigate?" Then he wouldn't have emphasized before coming that he didn't want to be restricted by the military. After Bai Quan finished speaking, he sighed, and then said, "If he really wants to come, it will be too late for me to be happy. As long as he is sincere, let alone our 14th Legion, the Empire will invest a lot of resources to support him. But look at what he's been through all this time. Is it possible?" The psyker thought for a while and said, "That's right. If you think about it differently, maybe he will leave in 2 days? If you don't have time to prepare your method, wouldn't it be fun to have a conflict with Chen Ming in advance? You can't just want to leave and have others stop you, right?" Bai Quan's eyes suddenly flashed with disgust, and he said, "There are always people who have their own ideas and want to realize them, even if the idea is wrong. Who could have such an idea? It's not you who has the final say here." Bai Quan shook his head slightly and said, "I know several people who have a lot of self-righteous ideas, and the place where I have the final say is only the station of the 14th Army Corps, and the outside is not my territory." He came very smoothly this time, but if he wants to leave the station, it may not be so safe. As soon as Bai Quan finished speaking, the psychic explorer changed the topic again and said, "Why do I feel that your temper has improved a lot? If you hadn't just opened the door on the ship to warn others that I have your last name. It was before, but now I have been in charge of so many things in an army for several months. There are many things that I really can't do at once. Even if there are many people sitting in key positions, it is difficult not to make people suspect that their heads and butts are in reverse. I still have to try my best to speak well to other people's heads or butts." The psychic explorer directly stated the essence of the problem Bai Quan encountered. The era of pioneering is over. New cakes can no longer be made. Then what is left is the relationship behind it. Bai Quan nodded in agreement, and at the same time he suddenly understood the thoughts of the Empire's top officials who initiated this war. In fact, he has always been eager for something to happen, but he has never said it out loud. That is, "Let's open up the era again, and let the capable people below kick all the shit out of the top." Are you scolding one of your own? Right. Even if the 14th Army Corps undergoes a reorganization, Bai Quan cannot guarantee that all members of the 14th Army Corps will be sane. Otherwise, how could his old boss send him to the Gallostar region and find these soldiers mixed with a bunch of spies and troublemakers to make things more difficult for him? He had to adjust and screen them himself to select the useful ones, and was tricked and seriously injured once. It was not until recently that he created a group of truly trustworthy people. The current 14th Legion, which was established only 20 years ago and is still fighting on the front line with Yuhui, cannot avoid such problems. Then the situation within those forces that have been established for a longer time is definitely not optimistic. And the Empire, the collection of all forces, is even more so. Wait, I almost led you astray. Bai Quan suddenly realized that he was not looking for someone to talk about this, and quickly returned to the previous topic and said, "Do you understand why Chen Ming took the risk to come here?" The psychic explorer saw that he could not escape, and casually guessed, "Maybe Chen Ming has a way to get out? Then how about I help you check his situation?" "No need, your psychic power was discovered by him last time, and it must be the same this time. Forget it, no matter what, I can only pretend that I didn't see anything at that time. I can't do too much because of my position." After chatting for a while, Bai Quan's confusion about Chen Ming's irrational behavior and the feeling of anger in his heart were almost dissipated. Originally, if it was someone Bai Quan didn't know who did something obviously irrational, he wouldn't even look at it. But Chen Ming happened to be someone he knew, and the two of them were very familiar with each other after getting along for a few months. So when he couldn't stop Chen Ming from making such a decision to jump into the fire pit knowing that it was a fire pit, he would get angry. But now that he has calmed down, he has nothing to say. They are all adults and must be responsible for their decisions. However, the psychic explorer suddenly said at this time, "Hey, you have to think positively. Chen Ming is not a fool, right?" "No." "Then he must have been well prepared before coming. Didn't he say so himself? He made this decision after he had the ability. His psychic power should have improved again." "What you said makes sense, but I don't know whether his psychic improvement is a good thing or a bad thing." The psychic explorer said in the tone of a very experienced person, "Don't worry about Chen Ming, and don't think about what he comes for. You have to think about what you can let him do when he comes. It seems that even if he really joins and according to your ideas, you will not be on guard against him as a psychic at his current level. His psychic power is there. Should we defend against it? Would your attitude then be different from now?" Bai Quan thought about the hypothetical scenario and said, "At least I don't have to worry about Chen Ming having any bad thoughts then." The psychic explorer immediately asked back, "How is your relationship with him?" "Not bad. Since he is in contact with you every day and learns skills from you, why is he suddenly preparing to mess with you without any warning? What do you think?" "It's mainly because his behavior today was suddenly very strange, and it's hard for me not to think too much." "Then change your mindset. What if he is just messing with you? Maybe he doesn't want to learn today and just made up an excuse. Is this possible?" "It's unlikely. The probability is not zero, right?" Bai Quan thought about it again. Chen Ming's mental state has always been quite stable. If he has something to say, he will generally speak normally and moderately. It's unlikely that he will suddenly express his meaning in such a twisted way. But today Chen Ming always gave him a very familiar and strange feeling, which made him unsure. However, Bai Quan's emotions were also stabilizing rapidly at this time, and he soon realized that this was his friend making a joke again. He would normally treat this as a joke, but he didn't expect that he would actually think about it now. Bai Quan quickly brought the topic back to the beginning. "The matter about Chen Ming has been settled. That is, Chen Ming will be responsible for his own decision." So the psychic explorer stopped talking nonsense and said seriously, "Anyway, just do your own thing. Just consider that Chen Ming wants to join your 14th Corps to participate in the war, and assign him some tasks or something." Bai Quan also said matter-of-factly, "Actually, it's a bit difficult to arrange. He is the strongest in the research of the mechanical race, and it is even more impossible for him to go directly to the battle. Then arrange a research institute for him, let him be the director, and then call him to listen to any combat meetings. Capable people will find suitable things for themselves. You don't have to arrange everything for him. You should be better than me at this kind of thing, right?" "Wait, you haven't made any arrangements at all, right?" Bai Quan denied. "How is that possible? I have made arrangements. But since I have come to you, I will ask you for some advice. You are the easiest psychic for me to find. What do you think should be done for Chen Ming?" "My opinion? In fact, I think it might be okay to let him participate in your current small-scale reconnaissance missions. This is not a large-scale conflict with the mechanical race. You can't just put some people who may not obey orders in. It's not easy to stuff it in on a small scale. He knows about the mechanical race, so maybe it will be good. And Chen Ming's psychic power can work on things controlled by his psychic power. As long as he stays at your base, it can be used as a device with no delay and can accurately transmit information back. Chen Ming's psychic power can do things that are 10,000 times more than what I said. If they are willing to come, they must be willing to work, otherwise why come? Just to eat for free? Bai Quan then remembered what Chen Ming had said just now, that he wanted to borrow the equipment of the 14th Legion for research. Although they would definitely give it, Chen Ming's performance was no different from robbing. So Bai Quan said casually at this time, maybe. Tisk, why did you start when I finished? The psychic explorer didn't realize that Bai Quan was actually telling the truth, not talking nonsense. However, he still chose to say seriously, if you are worried that he will not help, then you can simply send him a destroyer for each mission. Is that okay? The cost is not too high, right? Just consider it as a loss during the mission. Do you think Chen Ming will help you in this way? Bai Quan felt that the answer should be yes. Half an hour later, Bai Quan, who was busy in the office, suddenly saw the news that his subordinates had just reported that a Stardust-class cruiser appeared in the hyperspace of their base galaxy and applied to enter the galaxy. It's really here, Bai Quan muttered, put down the work at hand and quickly left the office, and soon boarded a cruiser that was ready to take off. At this time, Chen Ming was still patiently waiting on the Stardust class in the hyperspace. Since he said it before, of course he would come. As for the reason for choosing the Stardust class to come here, one is because the Stardust is the most suitable spaceship for his psychic power. The other reason is that Chen Ming will use the highest point to conduct a one-month transaction with Xiaoyang later. Moreover, his original body also needs to stay at the highest point, and he and his fake body need to work together for the subsequent daily study and research. Without those research equipment, his learning efficiency will be much lower. Chen Ming could actually work together a long time ago, but he didn't have a second person to share the pressure of work, so he had to perform different learning tasks in different time periods during the day. It's different now. With the existence of the fake body, Chen Ming even feels that he can do what 5 people can do. However, this will cause his thinking to be too scattered and his learning efficiency to decrease. So one original body and one fake body are the limit of continuing to work without reducing efficiency. Just when Chen Ming was thinking about how to allocate tasks between the original body and the fake body, Stardust suddenly received a new communication request. When Chen Ming answered the call, Bai Quan's face appeared on the screen in front of Chen Ming. Chen Ming greeted Bai Quan directly as usual. After all, the little conflict they had just had was nothing. Hello, Bai Quan. This is the temporary tactical instructor of the 14th Legion. Can I come in? Bai Quan suddenly stared at Chen Ming in a strange way for a while and said, come with me. As he said that, Bai Quan's spaceship turned the bow, started the channel engine, and left the hyperspace. The 5 cruisers of the 14th Legion that had been guarding Chen Ming's Stardust-class ship next to him finally let down their guard. Chen Ming followed directly. When they also entered the galaxy and approached the planet where the 14th Legion was stationed, Bai Quan asked Chen Ming, is there any afterglow on the ship? Chen Ming answered honestly, no. Well, the spacecraft entering the port later needs to undergo a full-disk deep scan. Remember to turn off the shielding device. Okay. Everything went according to the normal process. Chen Ming himself had no idea about the 14th Legion, so naturally he had no objection. And when Chen Ming followed Bai Quan and gradually approached the giant dock of the 14th Legion, the cruiser where Bai Quan was suddenly stopped. His communication was also sent over immediately, saying, I will drive the shuttle to pick you up. We will go directly to the ground. Can you remotely control this Stardust and drive in? Okay. Chen Ming still agreed decisively. Bai Quan did this obviously because he was worried that Chen Ming would use psychic energy casually on their giant dock. He knew very well what happened in Yu Hui's giant dock. Even if Chen Ming was in Bai Quan's position, he would definitely do the same. So he had no objection and just took it as a consideration for Bai Quan. Soon, Chen Ming stood on the flight deck of the Stardust class wearing a heavy protective suit. Not long after, he saw a shuttle from small to large, gradually approaching the Stardust from the starry sky outside, and landed on the Stardust class. Chen Ming turned off the opaque function of the mask and revealed his face. Several people walked down from the shuttle randomly. The face of Bai Quan was revealed under the helmet of the person who was also wearing heavy protective clothing. Bai Quan took a few steps forward and took the initiative to extend his hand to Chen Ming. Chen Ming also reached out and shook hands and said in the connected communication channel, "Is this the first time we meet in person?" "Yes, but we just met half an hour ago. There is no sense of ceremony at all." Bai Quan let go of his hand, turned around and greeted Chen Ming and said, "Get on the boat. I have to arrange it for you as soon as you come here suddenly." Chen Ming didn't say much, followed Bai Quan onto the ship and touched the shuttle boat. Bai Quan obviously noticed Chen Ming's little movements, but he didn't say anything. After the shuttle boat took off again, the Stardust class continued to follow the signal from the cruiser in front and the giant shipyard and entered the shipyard, staying in a separate ship's position. The shuttle went to the volcanic planet under the orbit of the giant shipyard. After passing by an ecological dome that Chen Ming saw covering an area 3 times larger than the mechanical city he controlled, landed in a small independent dome nearby. Bai Quan had already explained it to Chen Ming while the shuttle boat was still on the way. This is a dome specifically designed to house laboratories. It has a large square covered with green plants and 3 triangularly opposite buildings in the square: an office building, a laboratory building, and a dormitory building. Small-scale experiments can be conducted in the laboratory building. Large-scale experiments are conducted in the independent large laboratory in the middle of the 3 buildings. However, when Bai Quan personally took Chen Ming into the large laboratory hall, somehow, Chen Ming suddenly had a sense of déjà vu as when Yu Hui sent him to the research institute. However, the treatment he received then and now were very different. Moreover, the laboratory in front of him was also different from the research institute arranged by Yu Hui. It was the empty laboratory in front of him. Except for some basic power systems and basic living facilities in the living area where Bai Quan took Chen Ming at the beginning, it can be said that there is no equipment at all that can be used. Bai Quan explained this. "Originally, I thought you would not come to our place, so there was no arrangement at all in this regard, so I could only temporarily find a dome like this for you to stay in. The equipment that was originally intended to be provided to you will have to be shipped here again, which may take 2 or 3 days. That's just me being willful." Chen Ming took the initiative to apologize at this time. Anyway, the purpose has been achieved, and an apology will not lose any meat. Bai Quan waved his hand and said, "It's okay. You have the willfulness. But then again, I remember that you seem to have a hamster. Did you forget to bring it with you on the spaceship?" Chen Ming's body turned and glanced at Xiaoshi, who was wandering around on the highest point every day and didn't know what he was doing, and was a little speechless. However, the prosthesis still looked normal and said, "No, I put it in foster care temporarily." Bai Quan nodded and didn't ask any further questions. Instead, he took out the contract he had with Chen Mingqian and said, "Have you read the contents above? Originally, I was supposed to explain to you some key points and precautions in the upcoming war with the machine race after class every day. After you are familiar with it, I will slowly give you some tasks. And now? It's still the same, and we can still teach face-to-face when you come. The effect will definitely be better than remote teaching. The time will still be according to your original schedule." Chen Ming had already thought about this problem before and said, "No, since I'm here, the focus of the next period of time must be on command. I will directly follow the schedule of the 14th Army. I will do the rest by myself. I will find time to do it, but the physical training is still the same as before. It is not necessary." After all, Chen Ming went to the 14th Army Corps with a fake body, and exercising the fake body was as meaningless as taking off his pants and farting. Bai Quan nodded to indicate that he understood, and then he said, "Then I am more worried that you may not be able to spare the time. In addition to the daily teaching and war knowledge that I have to make up for you, there are also some tasks that you need to complete in the original plan." Before Chen Ming signed the contract, he read it carefully and knew what he needed to do. Although Chen Ming can enjoy the treatment of a colonel-level officer and only needs to bear the obligations of an ordinary citizen. However, when signing the contract, he must assume a separate obligation to assist the 14th Legion in researching the machine race. Since Chen Ming wants to take advantage of the benefits provided by the 14th Legion, he must take on some tasks. Even without this restriction, Chen Ming would not refuse some reasonable request from the 14th Legion. So now he said simply, "What kind of mission do you want? We need you to analyze some of the machine tribe's equipment." Chip? Even if it's a chip, I can't understand that thing. It's not a chip, it's something else we don't understand. Besides chips, what else don't you understand? This, Bai Quan said, placing a mechanical device with red lines. Chen Ming was very familiar with what Bai Quan put in front of Chen Ming. It was the purgatory core that he had obtained not long ago. Chen Ming pretended to look at the purgatory core for a few times and asked, "What is this? Did you get it from the machine tribe?" The purgatory core is the core of a special type of machine. The name of that machine is the Purgatory Demon King. Although Chen Ming had used his spiritual power to know the name of the Purgatory Demon King before, but now he couldn't help but say what he had wanted to say before. Is the Chinibu prisoner with this name? That's not the case. The translator found the name directly from the ruins document. Speaking of this, I will also give you some data on rare individuals of the machine tribe that you may not have seen before, as well as various documents related to the machine tribe that have not been made public to the public. Chen Ming nodded and asked again, "So what do you need me to do to get this thing?" "I need you to investigate the effect of this thing and see if it can be used." Question mark. Chen Ming was confused for a moment and said, "I heard you talk about that thing called the cryogenic computing engine before. It is also a relic of that civilization that is used by the Empire in various star fields. So now that the cryogenic computing engine can be used, is there no way to figure out this purgatory core?" Bai Quan explained, "The situations of these two are different. Although most of the cryogenic computing engine was found in ruins, we have never found the accompanying instructions. Even the way it is used is the data obtained from the cryogenic computing engines that are still running in the mechanical military base when we captured the frontline colonies of the mechanical clan. By analyzing and replicating these running low-temperature computing engines, it took us a long time to slowly master the use of the low-temperature computing engines, and then we completely perfected them. The Demon King of Purgatory is different. It can control the increase of entropy on a large-scale battlefield, turning the entire battlefield environment into a high-temperature purgatory. This is too threatening for us. It is definitely a target that must be attacked as soon as possible. It is impossible to capture it alive while it is running. Even if there are remaining Purgatory Demon Kings, they will often choose to self-destruct when the battlefield situation is completely out of control. At this time, we can't get anything. So we can only ensure that there will be no major problems on the battlefield by completely destroying the Demon King at the beginning of the battle. Bai Quan's words seemed to prove that they had made such an attempt before, but the result was obviously a failure. But the destroyed wreckage cannot capture the condition of the Purgatory core when the Purgatory Demon King was running. Currently, no backup Purgatory Demon King has been found to have been captured. When a ground war occurs, no Demon King can survive until the end of the battlefield and keep running. So we can't observe the core operation in sufficient detail. Bai Quan continued to add, "Then during the battle, the entropy gathered by the Demon King will also drastically interfere with the use of any sensing equipment. As a result, we are completely unable to scan it directly on the battlefield. So, the most we can do is analyze this core function from the Purgatory Demon King, which is the control of entropy displayed by the Purgatory Demon King. The actual use of the core, the internal energy flow, and the way the entropy control effect is constructed are difficult to determine." At this time, Chen Ming suddenly asked Bai Quan a question. "How are you sure that the Purgatory Demon King is controlling entropy instead of simply creating high temperatures? Have you ever seen a situation where the entire battlefield on a habitable planet is constant at 200 degrees Celsius for several hours without changing? This, Chen Ming has never seen it before. The Demon King he acquired before was obviously an antique from the mechanical clan. Perhaps because of the constant interference from the giant phase beast, the mechanical clan's investment in that colony was somewhat lacking in many areas. That Purgatory Demon King doesn't even have the core chip that carries the consciousness of the mechanical race, so naturally it can't do what the Demon King in good condition can do." Now that Bai Quan has answered Chen Ming's question, Chen Ming has no other questions to ask. Finally, he said, "Are you sure you want to hand this thing over to me?" Quan understood what Chen Ming meant. It was already established that Chen Ming's psychic power was not only for controlling the spacecraft, but also for controlling any mechanical body. Therefore, the purgatory core handed over to Chen Ming will only belong to Chen Ming after being touched by Chen Ming. However, the answer has been determined since Bai Quan took out the purgatory core from the beginning. We have fought many ground wars with the mechanical race, and this thing is not too rare. If we can use one or several purgatory cores as the cost for us to completely understand how the purgatory core operates, I think it should be worth it. Chen Ming nodded and took the purgatory core from Bai Quan's hand, and spiritual energy instantly soaked the core. In Bai Quan's unmistakable eyes, the crimson lines of the purgatory core in Chen Ming's hand flickered with a shimmer caused by the stimulation of some spiritual energy fluctuations. Chen Ming withdrew his spiritual energy fluctuations, and the glimmer of light at the core of purgatory became silent again. And Chen Ming said, "So, this thing should be regarded as an initial test for me. Choose the simplest thing for me to study, and see if I have the ability to study other more expensive things obtained from the mechanical tribe?" Bai Quan replied directly, "Absolutely. The 14th Legion indeed still has many things on hand that have not yet been researched into actual effects. Basically, they were snatched from the mechanical tribe. Although their research could not produce results, it would not be possible if they were handed over to Chen Ming. As long as Chen Ming can study the basic effects of this purgatory core, Bai Quan can hand over more things to Chen Ming for research. Even some things whose principles have been clarified, such as low-temperature computing engines, can be handed over to Chen Ming to study again. After all, Chen Ming's spiritual power is sometimes more accurate than the results obtained by using various equipment, at least in fields related to the machine race. Chen Ming didn't say much. After all, Bai Quan had a very normal reason for choosing to do this, and it was also good for him. But he still has some questions to ask. What is the value of a machine race like the Purgatory Demon King? It's not bad. The ability to control entropy in a wide range is there. It can be regarded as a top-notch ground combat unit. It will be very effective in ground combat when combined with high heat-resistant robots. But it doesn't mean much to us, because the main enemies the Empire currently faces, the Afterglow and the Machine Tribe, are not afraid of high temperatures. So my evaluation is that it's okay, so the core is more important. Is the core more important? Chen Ming asked Bai Quan again. If I have indeed developed the core method of use, what are your thoughts on using it? According to you, it will definitely not be used on the battlefield. Yes, so our current main purpose is to understand the operating principle of the Purgatory Core. But I have heard of a possible use, which is to combine the Purgatory Core with a cryogenic computing engine to achieve the effect of installing a cryogenic computing engine on a non-volcanic planet. Chen Ming thought about this idea for a while and asked, "Is the output power of the Purgatory Core enough?" It seems that it is not enough at the moment, but we can also choose to use multiple Purgatory Cores at the same time to match a low-temperature computing engine. The quantity gap between the two we have is not at the same level. Bai Quan's answer successfully solved Chen Ming's confusion. After Chen Ming thought about it for a while, he suddenly expressed an idea that he had always had. Then can you drive a capital ship to bomb a desolate planet with no resources, and manually create volcanic planets in some galaxies that don't have volcanic planets by destroying plates and attacking the planet's core? Bai Quan suddenly gave Chen Ming a thumbs up and said, "Good idea. This idea has been mentioned by people in the research department in the Imperial Army over the years. But you should also expect the result. It is too difficult to achieve and too dangerous. It has never been implemented in practice." Chen Ming just casually mentioned that if there is no feasibility, forget it. He didn't get too entangled and said, "I have no problem here." "Okay, the equipment to help you research the mechanical clan will be delivered one after another in a few days. I'll give you a list later. If you need anything else, just ask, as long as the Institute has installed it." Bai Quan said something suddenly occurred to him and said, "By the way, at the meeting at the headquarters yesterday, you said that you would help people verify the situation of the machine tribe being controlled by you. Those individuals, did I let them over?" That's okay." Although Chen Ming said before that this was an excuse he made casually. But the situation is different now. The timing of the successful research on prosthetic technology is too lucky. Those people can really call him over and actually see the effect of his use of psychic energy on the machine race. It can be regarded as proving the authenticity of what he proposed at the meeting. Chen Ming's answer surprised Bai Quan. After all, he didn't expect Chen Ming to agree to this kind of thing. Since the situation was different from what he thought, he immediately ignored the matter that Chen Ming had agreed to, and then said, "Then do you need some assistance or something?" "Assistant? You can have one too." Although Chen Ming can control all the devices, it is still a bit tiring to control too many devices if he is too distracted. If some things can be left to the assistant, he can save a lot of trouble. Well, then some of the people from the headquarters can stay as your assistants. Bai Quan said it matter-of-factly, but Chen Ming immediately realized something was wrong in his words and quickly asked, "Wait a minute, I have no objection to assistants, but they are willing?" Chen Ming thought that Bai Quan was going to select some freshly graduated college students from the 14th Army Corps. Why did he suddenly select those professional researchers who might know more about these aspects than he did? Bai Quan explained, "The research on the machine family that you talked about at yesterday's meeting was very clear. So yesterday, someone used the psychic power of a special psyker overnight to completely block the psychic fluctuations around a machine race captured by us. Although it seems to have no impact at all, there are no other psychic fluctuations at all. But the blocked machine did show extremely obvious intelligence. No, it should be a weakening of its computing power. This just proves your statement. And there are some other things you mentioned about the machine race that have been verified since yesterday. Some of them have already produced results. It can be said that everything is fine. So, you are now the authority on the research on the mechanical race. There are many researchers studying the machine race who are willing to assist you. It is not shameful to be the assistant of a psyker like you." All right. It seems that there is no need for him to prove that what he said is correct. Someone has already verified it for him. And these researchers who want to be his assistants, I have to choose myself. It's better to give me some new people. Bai Quan immediately agreed, "No problem. I will send you the list when the time comes, and you can choose by yourself." After seeing that Chen Ming agreed with his idea, Bai Quan said, "Okay, then this will be your research institute from now on. Do you want to give it a name?" "My institute." Chen Ming shook his head and said, "Just call it the Chaofan Research Institute." Bai Quan was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "I have a suspicion that you are working in a certain research institute, but it's okay. Then let me first say that your research institute needs to regularly study some special items similar to the Purgatory Core that we sent to you. In addition to studying these things, you can study anything you want, as long as it is related to the machine race. All your needs related to the research of the machine family can be met." Chen Ming asked with some uncertainty, "You can study anything?" "Anything is fine. You can even study how many kilowatt hours of electricity the machine race consumes for breakfast every day, as long as it is related to the machine race. These seemingly useless contents accumulate, and someone will always find important connections in them in the future." Chen Ming asked with some confusion, "What is this statement?" Over the years, the Empire has encountered more opponents than just Yu Hui and the Machine Tribe, but most of the other opponents are now dead, thanks to our continuous research on those things. There will always be someone who can find the key points from the complicated research results and then integrate them to discover the enemy's fatal weakness, and then there will be no more. Chen Ming instantly thought of an enemy that matched what Bai Quan was saying now. Thorn Zerg. When Chen Ming looked for the Thorn Zerg before, he found a large number of papers, and they were extremely complicated. These papers seem unrelated to each other and make no sense. But Chen Ming did seem to have seen a bunch of cited articles at the end of the paper that described the various situations of the Zerg itself in great detail. When an enemy has been thoroughly studied from what he eats in the morning to what color quilt he wears at night, it is really easy to deal with this enemy. That's okay. I'll remember it. Okay, let's do this for the Research Institute first. I have to explain your own affairs to you clearly. What's the matter? Bai Quan reached out and patted Chen Ming's shoulder, and at the same time put his other hand on his chest and said, "You have arrived at our 14th Legion, and you plan to change your original study schedule. But I don't have that much time here. Half a day is the limit of what I can spare." I'll have to let someone else take care of teaching you for the remaining half of the day. Chen Ming understood, nodded and said, That's right, I understand. It's best if you understand. It will be normal teaching in the morning. I will come directly to you then. In the afternoon, I will assign the personnel tomorrow, and I will ask the instructor to meet with you in the morning. No problem. Okay, now let me ask you one last time. Are you sure you really want to stay here? You can also see your current situation. Although Bai Quan didn't explain clearly, Chen Ming already understood. Even after he came to the 14th Legion, he could no longer leave the dome where he was now at will. His psychic ability makes too many people fearful, who would expect that the place where they stay every day would suddenly be controlled by a psyker, and everything else would be controlled by the psyker. So the meaning of Bai Quan's words is very clear, and it's not too late to regret it now. But now that Chen Ming is here, he will definitely not change his mind at will. He said firmly, Sure. Bai Quan stared at Chen Ming for a while and said, I hope you made the right decision. Okay, that's all you have to deal with here. Is everything okay? If you have any problems, tell me now and I'll help you solve them. Chen Ming thought about it and said, You said that all the equipment and manpower will be sent to me soon, and the research subjects will be sent to me when I complete the research on the core of purgatory. I can do whatever I want when I don't have research tasks. And about the learning aspect, because you don't have so much time to prepare to find an instructor for me, that's it? It feels like something is missing. Bai Quan immediately asked, What's missing? Aren't we at war with the machine tribe now? Although you said it's still in the early stages, you don't seem to have mentioned this aspect at all. Chen Ming's reason for coming to the 14th Legion was largely to participate in the war with the machine tribe. Bai Quan couldn't help but mention this now. Bai Quan immediately said, This, I know, but can you understand these contents now? Chen Ming actually knew that Baichuan's teachings were mostly about battlefield fleet command at this stage, and they really didn't involve this kind of star-level war in too much depth. If Chen Ming really wanted to understand, he might not understand the detailed situation of the current empire and the mechanical race. And Bai Quan continued, I have actually thought about this matter. I will talk to your new instructor about this matter later and ask him to give you intensive training in this area in the next few days. At least you have to be able to understand the combat aspects before I can let you get involved in these things, okay? No problem, that's it. I don't have any other questions. Bai Quan nodded and said, Then I'll go. See you tomorrow. When Chen Ming and Bai Quan walked to the gate of the institute, they saw another shuttle landing outside the edge of the dome in the distance. The original shuttle was parked in the technical secondary school area between the dome and the outside world. Although it was not turned off, the driver on it had switched to the shuttle that had just arrived. Bai Quan nodded to Chen Ming and took a step forward. When he stood at the door of the transfer area, he put on the helmet that he had taken off after entering the dome. He waved to Chen Ming and said, This shuttle is left for you. Tell me if you have anything, and then we'll start the boat. Chen Ming remotely controlled the shuttle that had come earlier to shut down and park it aside. He watched Bai Quan board another shuttle and disappear into the dark sky mixed with fire on this volcanic planet, and then return to the large laboratory behind him. The laboratory is still empty now, and Chen Ming can even hear the echo of his footsteps when he looks back. A feeling of loneliness suddenly enveloped him. Chen Ming felt his scalp tingling for a moment, and immediately turned his attention back to the main body. When he saw the flow of people coming and going in the ordinary dock not far from the highest point, Chen Ming breathed a sigh of relief, and his tense nerves relaxed again. Sure enough, this feeling of loneliness is still a bit torturous. The journey in space for more than half a year before seems to have left him with some psychological problems. Chen Ming felt that he had to find a way to ask Bai Quan for some small animals to raise. Anyway, the square outside is so big, and it's easy to raise some animals in the area covered by green plants. By the way, you can also ask Bai Quan for a few guards, just to add some popularity. After Chen Ming calmed down again, he focused on the purgatory core again. He has some ideas about the research of the purgatory core. Although he had a purgatory core before, that core was installed in the Purgatory Demon King, and various tests that can only be carried out with the Purgatory Demon King were carried out. Because Chen Ming's idea is to use the Purgatory Demon King as a ground combat force, He has only the Purgatory Demon King left to fight except for the Zerg. And the Zerg is not easy to take out directly in front of people. So the mechanical race has become the best means for him in this situation. So he must use the Demon King with the Purgatory Core installed to test the combat. And he has never done experiments that directly use the Purgatory Core itself to achieve some effects. Now it was different. Chen Ming could even use this Purgatory Core to conduct some destructive experiments. Anyway, the dome was under his control, and no one knew what was going on under the dome. No one could question the results of his experiments. He would try to write a decent process. Try to make it possible for people to use the Purgatory Core and replicate the process of Chen Ming's research. After all, the relics of another civilization were often designed to allow ordinary people to use psychic power. Of course not now. Chen Ming put away the Purgatory Core. The research plan he had in mind could not be completed in a day or two. He was not in a hurry at all. He might as well get familiar with the environment of this experimental dome now. By the way, according to the list of research equipment sent by Bai Quan, he planned the location of the equipment inside the laboratory. Bai Quan, after he boarded the shuttle, someone came up and held his arm immediately, holding a small steel knife and scraping the hand that Bai Quan had just touched Chen Ming's shoulder, and said at the same time, "The pupil, fingerprint, and voice print have all been compared and confirmed to be Chen Ming's real body. The skin fragment tissue has been obtained, and the gene comparison will be carried out soon. If the gene result is okay, then there is indeed no problem. It's just that the psychic has already used the psychic power. Is there any need for inspection?" Bai Quan shook his head. Of course he knew that there was no need for inspection. It was just that feeling he had before, that the feeling that Chen Ming in front of him was not like Chen Ming, that made him make this decision. Although from the actual contact just now, Chen Ming is indeed Chen Ming, and the result has been confirmed. But for some reason, he still feels that Chen Ming's behavior is problematic. Bai Quan shook his head again and temporarily put aside his entanglement with this issue. Anyway, Chen Ming is here, and he can slowly find an opportunity to deal with anything later. Early the next morning, Bai Quan took the shuttle and landed on Chen Ming's dome, and soon found Chen Ming, who was studying the core of Purgatory in the laboratory with the equipment he made yesterday. As soon as he came up, he said to Chen Ming, "There is bad news. Our volcanic planet is now entering a periodic geological activity period. Volcanic eruptions and earthquakes will become more frequent, and the dome may also be damaged. If you encounter an accident, you can hide in the underground of the laboratory." Chen Ming knew that the underground floor of the laboratory was still a laboratory, and the underground floor was a pure refuge center. Almost all domes built on similar extreme planets will have such a design to protect the safety of the internal personnel and facilitate subsequent rescue in case of accidents. And Chen Ming also knew that something was wrong outside the dome today. When he got up in the daytime and walked from the dormitory building to the laboratory, he could see that the environment outside was worse than yesterday. Not only the visibility was reduced, but the activity of the magma increased. Chen Ming could see the red light rising from the sky from time to time, and the dome was hit by the splashing magma from time to time. But fortunately, the dome looked fine. This is the manifestation of the geological activity period. So when Bai Quan told the specific situation, Chen Ming directly asked back, "Then why are you here?" Bai Quan still looked calm and said, "It's okay. It's just that the geological activities are a little more frequent. You'll get used to it. Under normal circumstances, the safety of the dome can be guaranteed. Don't worry too much. I just remind you that if an accident really happens, you won't be at a loss as to what to do." Chen Ming nodded, put down the glowing red Purgatory Core and said, "Then we will still teach normally today, right?" "Yes, it's fine here. I brought all the necessary information." Bai Quan shook the terminal that Chen Ming had given him. Chen Ming didn't say much, and took Bai Quan to a rare room in the laboratory that was equipped with some basic equipment. Before the class officially started, Chen Ming said to Bai Quan, "I have something to tell you now. Didn't you send me a list of equipment yesterday?" "Yes, all the equipment will be sent to you. Do you want to add new equipment?" Chen Ming denied. "No new equipment is needed for the time being. I just need the equipment on the list to be shipped faster, and then a few equipment must be delivered first. The sooner the better." "Which ones?" Chen Ming sent back the list that Bai Quan sent him, and he ticked some items on it. In addition to the equipment, he also needs some additional materials. Bai Quan whispered the names of the equipment Chen Ming ticked: high-precision temperature measuring instrument, temperature and pressure stabilizer, temperature guide tube, large constant temperature repeater, and thermal insulation material. It can be seen at a glance that this thing is related to the research of the purgatory core, so it must not be delayed. Okay, I will arrange it for you now. Bai Quan took out another terminal, and while contacting the person, he asked Chen Ming, anything else? Not urgent for the time being, just these are the priority. Okay. Bai Quan quickly put down the terminal and said, it has been arranged, let's start normally. Chen Ming nodded, sat down and looked at Bai Quan. The morning class ended quickly and normally, and at the end, another shuttle landed on Chen Ming's dome. The instructor who came down was the instructor Bai Quan arranged for Chen Ming. He was responsible for Chen Ming's afternoon teaching. The instructor had a very ordinary face and a very ordinary name. He was also very conscientious in class, but his level seemed to be a little lower than Bai Quan's. But Chen Ming wanted to have another instructor of Bai Quan's level as his instructor, which was really a bit too much. In short, it was not a big problem. The instructor in the afternoon was to help him supplement some theoretical knowledge. There was also the knowledge of large-scale battlefields that he needed to strengthen his study in recent times. Of course, it was just basic knowledge and did not include any actual combat command knowledge. So it didn't matter to Chen Ming if the teaching level was a little lower. If he really wanted to learn command, he had to learn from Bai Quan. Time soon came to night. Today, Chen Ming did not review and consolidate the daytime content as usual. Even though the difficulty of the content taught by Bai Quan has gradually become abstract recently, the basic knowledge of large-scale wars and front lines in the afternoon is also relatively complicated. Chen Ming did not choose to review, but directly took the equipment and materials that he had specially asked Bai Quan to speed up during the day to the laboratory. He wants to continue the research he left unfinished yesterday, because he saw some potential from this research that he had not discovered before. In fact, at the beginning, Chen Ming only regarded the research on the core of purgatory as an ordinary task. But yesterday, Chen Ming became familiar with the situation of the dome and completely controlled the dome. And after completing the experiment of connecting a simple ordinary power system to the core of purgatory in the laboratory, he discovered a strange place. It is his spiritual energy itself that allows him to master the method of controlling mechanical equipment. Of course, he can master it according to the function of the equipment itself. There will be no effect of mastering more than the ability to use the device. For example, there was an electromagnetic gun in front of him that Chen Ming had never used before. As long as he used his spiritual power to control it, he would be able to master the technology of using the electromagnetic gun. Not only can he use his psychic energy directly, he can also directly operate the electromagnetic gun himself. But if Chen Ming wants this electromagnetic gun to walk on the ground, he can only use psychic energy to modify a pair of mechanical legs. The electromagnetic gun is no longer the original electromagnetic gun, and the various equipment he modified are not the original equipment either. In other words, Chen Ming's psychic power cannot do things beyond the functions of the mechanical equipment itself, and it can only be achieved through transformation. Chen Ming's original understanding of the Purgatory Core is the core component of the Purgatory Demon King. It is matched with the Purgatory Demon King and has no other functions. And he himself does not have the ability to transform the core of Purgatory. Therefore, Chen Ming had always believed that the Purgatory Core could only be used in conjunction with the Demon King. Even after getting the Purgatory Core given by Bai Quan, his research was in this direction. What he has to do is help analyze the core effects and sort out the functions into a version that others can understand. The actual modifications and further applications should be left to others. Since cryogenic computing engines can be used on a large scale in the Empire, it means that there is always someone studying the technology of another civilization, and they must be more powerful than him. He just needs to figure out the principles and then assign the task to the right person. But now, after yesterday, Chen Ming relied on some hand-rubbed equipment to conduct a rough test that he would never do in the first place. He found that the situation in the core of Purgatory seemed to be a little different from what he thought. when he used spiritual energy to directly control the core that was removed from the Demon King. He found that a new function appeared on the core, or a new module, an independent running module. And the reason for this new independent module: after the core is disassembled, its internal structure will deflect and create a new structure. It is not a module used to support the Purgatory Demon King, but it can directly call the basic functions of the Purgatory core. So what does it come with? Chen Ming already had a guess in his mind. So he increased his energy in researching the core of Purgatory yesterday. However, yesterday's time was obviously not enough for research, and the laboratory equipment was completely insufficient. Chen Ming is not outrageous enough to master the licensing methods of all research equipment, so he can only wait for Bai Quan to send some important equipment. That was the device he asked Bai Quan to deliver during the day. Today, he must figure out the reason for the core situation. Chen Ming's spiritual power once again took over the Purgatory core, penetrating every corner of the Purgatory core. If the situation is really what he thinks, then the Purgatory core should bring him some surprises. The next day, Bai Quan came to the laboratory like yesterday and saw Chen Ming, who was also studying the core of Purgatory. After saying hello, he asked Chen Ming, "How is the situation?" Chen Ming's face was a little anxious, but his eyes were still locked on the core of Purgatory, and he said without raising his head, "I researched until late at night yesterday, and I did make some interesting discoveries. But I still need time and some equipment. There are some equipment that are not on the list, and there are some on the list that I need you to send quickly." Chen Ming reached out and clicked a few times on the terminal next to him, then sent the list to Bai Quan. Several research equipment related to the Purgatory core were checked again on the list, and a few more things were added by Chen Ming himself. Bai Quan took a look and said, 2 types of thermal insulation coating materials, a device that can cool down extremely quickly, and a high-intensity temperature detector that can operate in extreme environments. Chen Ming was not surprised that Bai Quan knew what he needed. These were materials and equipment commonly used in the manufacturing process of spacecraft engine nozzle components. Bai Quan checked for a while and then said, "No problem. I can arrange a batch for you right away. Is there anything else you need?" Bai Quan's question reminded Chen Ming of his previous thoughts and said, "My place is a bit deserted. Are there any small animals that I can raise?" "Well, we have a special breeding farm." Chen Ming raised his head unexpectedly and asked, "A breeding farm? Otherwise, where do you think the meat and vegetables in the cold storage in your dormitory building come from?" Chen Ming lowered his head again and asked, "Isn't it packaged survival food?" "Of course there are packaged survival foods, but not for times like this. Of course we have to supply fresh food to the army in normal times. This has an impact on the morale of the entire army. And the main reason is that the transportation cost of the volcanic planet is high, and the regular transportation of meat and vegetables that are difficult to preserve fresh for a long time is too expensive. Although the cost of building a complete recycling system for farmland and livestock farms is also very high, it is a one-time investment and will continue to yield rewards. I will definitely choose this." Chen Ming had some questions and said, "I remember that the military in the previous sector was quite corrupt. Is this kind of facility still maintained?" "It is maintained, but only partially, to provide fresh food to the local military's top brass. The entire facility was mainly rebuilt after I took over, and it was also partially expanded." "Ahem. I'm going too far. What pet do you want?" "The animals I breed there are all improved breeds with high meat yields, short growth cycles, and short lifespans. They are not suitable as pets. If you really need it, you can just tell me and I will help you arrange it and bring it from other places." The anxiety on Chen Ming's face due to the unsatisfactory progress of the experiment eased a little. He suddenly turned to look at Bai Quan and asked, "Anything is okay?" Bai Quan quickly went through common pets in his mind, even strange pets like spiders and scorpions, and finally said, "Everything should be fine. I want the Aurora Wind Spirit, the giant butterfly that can create aurora." Question mark. "Do you want to keep butterflies that live in the atmosphere in a dome?" Chen Ming said, "I heard that the larvae of Aurora Wind Spirit live on the ground and will emerge as pupae after 3 or 4 years of growth. After it emerges, it will continue to live at low altitude for about a year. During this time, its size will increase to the point where it can fly into the atmosphere. I should be able to raise it for a few years, right? Bai Quan's face was still full of confusion and he asked, "How come you know so much about this thing?" Of course Chen Ming understands. Because this aurora wind spirit was one of the creatures he had originally planned to feed to the insect queen. Behind this natural phenomenon that produces beautiful auroras are terrifying creatures that can control plasma. It is simply the best source of genes for the insect queen. But precisely because it can control plasma, it is very difficult to capture the aurora wind spirit. This is not the key yet. The key is that the aurora wind spirit only exists on one planet in the Empire's prosperous star field, and the Empire has also established an ecological protection zone. It's impossible to get it through normal means. But Baichuan's side is obviously not a normal way. After thinking for a moment, he picked up the terminal and called someone. Finally, he turned to Chen Ming and said, "Aurora wind spirit can do it, but we can only get its eggs or newly hatched larvae. Don't think about it as an adult. Just because the plasma generated by the aurora wind spirit could damage the dome, it was impossible for Bai Quan to support Chen Ming. The larvae will do too. That's it, I'll make the arrangements, but let's make it clear first that the ecological environment of the dome is not suitable for the aurora wind spirit, and you will most likely feed it to death." "It's okay, I won't want a second one if I raise it to death." Chen Ming didn't care whether aurora wind spirit died or not. He just wanted to feed the queen the worms. If it wasn't so easy to survive, it would be hard for him to find an excuse for aurora wind spirit to die. Anyway, the queen of insects has metamorphosed to the point where it can express the genes it has devoured directly through its consciousness from a body that has no new genes at all. As long as the queen can separate some tissue to eat the larvae sent by Bai Quan. The rest is easy to say. Bai Quan was slightly relieved that Chen Ming didn't ask for too much. After the two of them arrived in the classroom, Bai Quan suddenly said, "By the way, some people from the think tank asked me to ask you a question. What happened to the conjectures they raised before?" Chen Ming was stunned for a moment and said, "Are they still paying attention to me? I thought they were just a one-time think tank you hired." "It's not a one-time thing, of course. It's just that I can let them do other things if you don't need it." "Then I still want them." After all, the think tank directly discovered the huge potential of his psychic ability and the machine race to build a hive mind network of the machine race through what he said at the meeting and a few casual introductions to his psychic powers. The think tank's logical thinking ability, divergent thinking ability, and association ability are really exaggerated. Maybe there will be some performance in the future? Therefore, Chen Ming does not want to reject the existence of the think tank now. "They didn't show up 2 days before I came here. I thought it was because you didn't make arrangements." Bai Quan explained helplessly, "I am actually making arrangements, but their continuous transfer of personnel will take time. Originally, they have just joined the think tank. Their identities have just been transferred from other departments, and then they have to transfer to you. This always takes time. They'll be here in 2 days, it won't be long." Also, after understanding the situation, Chen Ming said, "Let's wait until they come over at that time." "Well, let's start class." The day passed in a blink of an eye. Night comes again. Chen Ming still came to the laboratory. Yesterday, he had basically analyzed the special structure of the purgatory core. It is a semi-independent nested structure. It allows the same components to play different functions in different modules. Although the two functions cannot be used at the same time, this design does achieve the most functions with the least materials and the smallest space. Chen Ming could not understand the key design related to the psychic power inside the purgatory core. But the design on the core, this special pure structural design, is still understandable and can be mastered. But Chen Ming's focus is not here now. What he wants to figure out most now is the effect of the other layer of the purgatory core that can be used under his psychic control. Chen Ming lowered his head and devoted himself to the research of the purgatory core. When Chen Ming raised his head next time, it was already late at night like yesterday. Chen Ming's face showed a smile and a trace of regret. Although the research has not been completely successful, he is very close. Only the last step is left. It's a pity that this last step cannot be completed now, so he can only go to rest first. Another day dawns. Another day of teaching. Another day, Bai Quan pushed open the door of the laboratory and saw Chen Ming standing in front of the laboratory equipment. Bai Quan greeted Chen Ming as usual and sent a list of personnel to Chen Ming on the terminal. Chen Ming turned his head slightly, glanced at the terminal and asked, "What is this?" "This is the list of researchers who came to the Gallo Star region. There are two lists, one for those who came to see and left, and one for those who are willing to stay and be your assistant." Chen Ming didn't click to read it and asked directly, "How many people?" "The total number of people who came is more than 1,200, and the number of people willing to stay is about 500. Chen Ming's hand suddenly paused and said, "So many?" But Chen Ming had thought of about 50 assistants before, and it would be difficult for him to manage more. After all, he has no experience in managing too many people, and these 50 are almost the limit. It's just that there are so many people willing. It doesn't mean that you must keep so many. You can just pick the people you think are useful and leave, isn't it over? That's right. Chen Ming was relieved and put down the Purgatory Core. He opened the list and selected the personnel as his assistants. When Chen Ming handed the list of selected personnel back to Bai Quan said to him, "People should be here tomorrow. After your psychic power has been verified for the effect on the mechanical race and the experiment is completed, those who should leave will leave, and those who should stay will stay. And the 5 think tanks will come to you with others tomorrow." Chen Ming and Bai Quan did not chat about trivial matters for too long. A normal day of teaching began. Time came to night. Chen Ming had just sent the instructor away when he received something sent by Bai Quan. Today, he also asked Bai Quan for some equipment during the day. Although it took some effort, it finally came. Chen Ming took the equipment to the laboratory. The regret of yesterday was completely gone because he knew that he would soon achieve his goal. Chen Ming clenched the exquisite equipment in his hand, a miniature antimatter reactor that Chen Ming had seen before. This is the equipment that Chen Ming and Bai Quan wanted today. This reactor will be able to play its role immediately. The progress of Chen Ming's research yesterday was much smoother than the day before yesterday. Basically, it has been confirmed that his conjecture is correct. Chen Ming has now completely mastered the method of using psychic energy to directly activate the Purgatory Core. Instead of the normal method that he had already mastered using psychic energy, he activated the Purgatory Core by using the matching Purgatory Demon Lord system and then used the core. This is equivalent to skipping the Purgatory Demon Lord as a repeater and directly using the Purgatory Core by Chen Ming himself. Chen Ming himself controls the Purgatory Core through psychic energy to control the entropy increase and entropy stability of the entire environment. Now, he is going to carry out the last step of the experiment, the actual test. So he needs an antimatter reactor to completely activate the Purgatory Core. Chen Ming took the Purgatory Core and the antimatter reactor and connected the two with the relay device he just made, which was regarded as plugging a source of energy into the Purgatory Core. Just when Chen Ming was about to start the test, the terminal beside him suddenly rang. Bai Quan called in the middle of the night.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.